You first meet him not as a monster, not as the villain whispered about in hushed tones, but as a man. That's what makes it dangerous. You walk into the room. Maybe it's a community hall. Maybe it's a rented farmhouse lit by dim yellow bulbs. And he stands at the center. His presence isn't loud, but it fills every corner. His voice cuts through the silence as if it belongs there, a warm and measured tone that promises understanding you didn't even know you were desperate for. He is the charismatic stranger, the kind of figure you can't help but notice. You feel it before you admit it, an unexplainable pull. His eyes seem to rest on you longer than they should, and though he's speaking to a crowd, you feel singled out, chosen. He doesn't preach in fire or brimstone. No, his words are softer, honeyed, designed to ease instead of confront. He speaks of loneliness, of the ache that gnaws at the modern soul, of the emptiness that no job or relationship ever seems to fill. And as you listen, you realize he is naming wounds you thought only you carried. That's the opening. Not logic, not doctrine, wounds. He makes you feel that your pain is sacred, that your isolation is proof of your worth. He offers not solutions, but promises. Promises that all who walk with him will never feel unwanted again. You glance around and notice others nodding, tears glistening in their eyes, as if they too have stumbled upon something miraculous. It is not yet a cult, it is simply a gathering, and he is simply a man who seems to know the language of broken people. You tell yourself you are only curious, just a visitor. Yet the way he paces, the way he pauses right before the most important words, it is a choreography of persuasion. You don't realize it, but you're already leaning forward in your chair. Every joke he cracks is met with nervous laughter, every silence with held breaths. And in that silence, he scans the room with a subtle smile, as though he is measuring who will follow and who will resist. You don't want to be the latter. The people around you are diverse. Some are young, drifting in search of belonging, others older, carrying disappointments too heavy to share with family. There are couples holding hands as if bracing against the world together, and single men and women sitting on the edges, waiting to be noticed. He notices them all. He notices you. And when his gaze locks on yours, you can almost hear the unspoken invitation. You are not alone anymore. It's a simple phrase, but it's magnetic. People don't join cults because they want to. They join because someone makes them feel that their emptiness, their longing, is finally understood. And here, in this stranger's orbit, you feel the flicker of that relief. He doesn't talk about God, not yet. He doesn't talk about blood or sacrifice or loyalty unto death. Those horrors will come later, masked in ritual and twisted scripture. For now, he talks about love, about building a community where judgment cannot reach you, about creating a family stronger than blood, purer than marriage, safer than any friend you've ever trusted. He wraps it all in a tone of inevitability, as though this vision has already been written, and you are simply stepping into your rightful place. After the gathering, people linger. Some approach him eagerly, basking in his attention. Others, like you, hover on the edge, torn between leaving and stepping closer. You hear him laugh with one of the followers, low, rich, conspiratorial. It makes you want to be included in the joke. And when you finally summon the courage to approach, he turns toward you with such warmth it feels rehearsed. He calls you brother or sister as though you've been a part of him all along. You shake his hand. His grip is firm, almost possessive, and in that instant, you feel it, the subtle transfer of power. You don't yet know the depth of his darkness. You don't yet see the blood that will one day stain his name. But you've taken the first step. And with cult leaders, the first step is always the most dangerous because it's the one you take willingly. The night air feels different when you leave, colder, emptier, as though the warmth of the gathering has spoiled you against the outside world. You replay his words in your mind, tracing their shape, wondering how a stranger could reach into you so quickly. You don't know it yet, but he has already begun building a home in your thoughts, a home he will one day refuse to leave. The night air feels different when you leave, colder, emptier, as though the warmth of the gathering has spoiled you against the outside world. You replay his words in your mind, tracing their shape, wondering how a stranger could reach into you so quickly. You don't know it yet, but he has already begun building a home in your thoughts, a home he will one day refuse to leave. You return, of course. That's how these things begin, not with a leap, but with a drift. You tell yourself it's harmless, just another night among strangers who somehow feel familiar. The leader, he insists on being called only by his chosen name, a name that sounds like something out of scripture, welcomes you back with a nod that feels heavier than it should. It isn't just recognition, it's approval, as if by showing up again, you've already passed a test you didn't know you were taking. Tonight, his words go deeper. They no longer just name your loneliness, they frame it as destiny. He tells you the world has always rejected people like you, people with eyes open wide enough to see the cracks in society. He says the emptiness you've carried was placed there intentionally, a mark of separation, proof that you were never meant to belong to the ordinary world. He paints himself as the one who can fill it, the one who can give you what no job, no relationship, no family could provide. And you want to believe him, because who doesn't want their suffering to mean something? The room responds to him like a living organism. When he speaks of love, you feel it ripple through the crowd, visible in the way heads bow and shoulders relax. When he pauses, the silence feels sacred, a pause filled with more than words. You catch yourself nodding, not because you understand every sentence, but because it feels wrong not to. His rhythm is hypnotic, building and releasing tension until you forget what you came to question in the first place. Then comes the promise. He says no one here will ever walk alone again, that those who gather under his roof are bound tighter than blood. He describes a new family, not one born of obligation, but of choice, of higher purpose. He tells stories of betrayal, of parents who never understood, of friends who turned their backs. Each tale echoes in the room like it belongs to everyone listening. And when he says that in this circle you will never be betrayed, you feel the stirrings of devotion. You notice the small acts around you, followers laying hands on one another's shoulders, whispered prayers that sound like confessions, tears wiped without shame. These are the seeds of devotion. The acts may look simple, but they're carefully orchestrated, each one reinforcing the idea that loyalty here is rewarded with acceptance and doubt with alienation. After the gathering, he lingers among the crowd again, touching arms, blessing foreheads, speaking softly as though he carries a personal word for each soul. When he reaches you, his gaze is steady, unblinking. He tells you that you carry a light, a calling, something rare. He says you've been chosen. You don't know what for, but you don't need to. Chosen is enough. Chosen means seen. As you leave again, you feel the shift inside you. This isn't just curiosity anymore. Something in you wants to protect what you found here, to nurture it before it slips away. You replay his words, the way he spoke of destiny and family, and you wonder why the outside world has never spoken to you like this. You begin to resent that world, the jobs that drain you, the friends who never understood you, the endless grind that left you hollow. Compared to the warmth of that room, the outside feels gray, cruel, barren. The seeds have been planted. Devotion doesn't bloom overnight. It grows slowly, fed by repetition, watered by longing. Each time you return, each time you listen, each time you feel chosen, those roots dig deeper. And though you don't yet realize it, the man at the center is already weaving a net strong enough to catch you, strong enough to hold you when the rest of the world finally lets go. You go to bed that night restless. His words echo like scripture in your head. Not commandments, not rules, just promises. Promises you've begun to crave. By the third time you return, it feels less like a visit and more like a homecoming. The strangeness has thinned. The walls of the room no longer loom unfamiliar. You recognize faces, smiles, nods of recognition. And most of all, you notice that he, your leader, remembers you. Not just your name, but details you barely recall sharing. A job you said you hated, the town you grew up in, the fracture in your voice when you admitted you'd been searching for something. That memory feels like intimacy. It convinces you that he truly sees you, that in a sea of faces, your existence isn't just tolerated, but cherished. He draws you closer now, not into his arms, but into his circle. There's a cluster of people who stand nearer to him, who laugh when he laughs and nod before he finishes speaking. They are not like the others who sit farther back, hesitant, still visitors. These are the loyal ones, the inner circle. They move with quiet authority, directing chairs, guiding newcomers, repeating his words like scripture, even after he has stopped talking. When you're near them, you feel the pull of their confidence. They speak with the certainty of those who believe they've glimpsed the truth. And they welcome you in, testing you with questions. What brought you here? What do you feel when he speaks? Do you sense the calling too? Their eyes linger, as if weighing your answers, as though your place in this circle depends on how deeply you echo their faith. It's intoxicating. Acceptance is no longer just about being part of a crowd, it's about being close to him. You see how his eyes flicker toward his inner circle, how he allows them to laugh at his private jokes, how he places his hand on their shoulders like a benediction. Their proximity is privilege, and you begin to hunger for it. During the gathering, you notice how carefully the inner circle reinforces his words. When he declares that the outside world is poisoned, they murmur agreement loud enough for others to hear. When he pauses, they pick up the thread, whispering his truths to anyone nearby. They are his echo chamber, the amplification of his authority. And you begin to realize that to truly belong, you must become like them. Afterward, one of them invites you to stay longer, to share in a smaller gathering reserved for those he trusts more deeply. The room is dimmer, the circle tighter. Here, he doesn't just preach, he confides. He tells stories of his struggles, of visions he claims to have received, of the pain that shaped him into the man who now guides others. You notice how his voice softens, how his vulnerability makes the others lean closer. It is a performance, but in that moment, you can't see the strings. You're asked to speak too, not to preach, but to confess, to share what has broken you, what emptiness brought you here. The inner circle listens with solemn nods, their faces filled with compassion. The leader doesn't interrupt. He lets silence cradle your words until you feel that your wounds have been sanctified by being spoken aloud. And when you finish, he places his hand on yours, his gaze heavy with meaning, and whispers, "You are safe here." The weight of that assurance is staggering. For the first time in a long time, maybe ever, you feel as though your pain has been not just heard, but honored. As the night ends, the inner circle embraces you, each hug tighter, longer than the last. They speak of you as if you've already joined something larger, something permanent. It feels less like a choice now and more like a current you're being carried along. To resist would be to deny what everyone else seems to see so clearly, that you belong here. Walking away, you don't feel like an outsider anymore. You feel tethered, pulled into an orbit where his gravity grows stronger each day. And with every step closer, your life outside begins smaller, duller, almost irrelevant. The inner circle has opened its arms, and you have stepped inside without even realizing the door has closed behind you. The shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Once the leader and his inner circle have wrapped you into their orbit, the next step begins, cutting the cords that tie you to the world outside. At first, it's disguised as advice, gentle and reasonable, even caring. He tells you that the people out there, family, friends, coworkers, can't possibly understand what you've found. They'll mock it, belittle it, try to drag you back into emptiness. Why would you expose something so sacred to people who cannot appreciate it? And you nod because it makes sense. Haven't you felt the disconnection already? Haven't you noticed how their conversation seems shallow compared to the depth of what you're experiencing here? The room with its hushed voices and clasped hands feels more real than any dinner table you've sat at before. The leader names that feeling for you, giving it meaning. You are awakening, and they are asleep. The next time you call your parents, you hesitate before mentioning the gatherings. When you finally do, their skepticism feels sharper than you expected. Be careful, they warn. Don't get too involved. Their tone isn't cruel, but it stings all the same because it confirms what he told you. They don't understand. You hang up feeling not just misunderstood, but betrayed. And when you walk back into the circle, the leader welcomes you with open arms, soothing the ache like he knew it was coming all along. Soon, he encourages you to spend more time with the group. Why waste hours with coworkers who gossip and complain when you could be here, building something eternal? Why exhaust yourself with outside obligations when your true family needs you? And so you stay later. You cancel plans. You let messages pile up unanswered. You think you're choosing freely, but the choice is being shaped every time he praises your commitment, every time the circle murmurs approval when you say you gave something up to be here. The isolation grows layer by layer. He discourages you from consuming outside media, books, shows, news, all tainted by lies and corruption, he says. Instead, you should immerse yourself in his teachings, his tapes, his writings. The more you listen, the more you realize his voice has begun to replace your own inner thoughts. Then there's money. It begins innocently. Small donations, love offerings, symbolic gifts to support the community. But soon the expectation hardens. The circle praises sacrifice, and stories circulate of members who gave up jobs, houses, savings. You watch them bask in admiration, and a quiet envy creeps into you. You begin to wonder if your own devotion looks shallow by comparison. But the most powerful tactic isn't money, it's relationships. One night, he speaks of family as chains, obligations designed to hold you back from your true destiny. He says blood ties mean nothing compared to spiritual bonds. The group nods, and you feel yourself nodding too, though a part of you still resists. You think of your parents, your siblings, your friends. Yet, when you imagine trying to explain this place to them, you see their blank stares, their mocking smiles. You feel the leader's words pressing against that memory. They will never understand. It's not long before you notice how others have severed ties completely. One woman sold her house and moved into a communal property with the group. A young man quit school after the leader declared education a tool of corruption. And each of them is celebrated, lifted higher in the hierarchy. You watch as they glow under his approval, and you wonder when it will be your turn. The isolation isn't absolute yet, but it doesn't need to be. What matters is that the seed has been planted. You begin to feel guilty for every hour spent outside the circle, every conversation with outsiders who don't believe. You start censoring yourself around them, careful not to expose too much of your new world. It feels easier, cleaner to withdraw, to let go. And in that quiet letting go, something shifts inside you. The outside world begins to fade, like a dream dissolving upon waking. The leader's world grows sharper, more vivid, more necessary. The divide widens, and soon you cannot imagine belonging to both. You must choose. And though you don't say it yet, the choice is already being made for you. By now, the leader's voice doesn't just soothe, it commands. His teachings no longer hover in the realm of comfort and belonging. They reach deeper, reshaping the very way you think about fear, morality, and truth. You sit among the circle, eyes fixed on him as he speaks not of love, but of danger. He says the world outside is a battlefield filled with forces bent on destroying everything pure. He describes enemies lurking in shadows, disguised as neighbors, co-workers, even family. His tone sharpens, and the warmth of his earlier words cools into something harder, sharper, more absolute. Fear settles into the room like incense, heavy and intoxicating. You feel it in your chest, the thrum of anxiety that convinces you he is right. Because why else would the outside world mock, doubt, and question what feels so holy here? To dismiss this must be evil, must be corrupted. He names it so, labeling all outsiders as tools of darkness. This is the doctrine of fear. It isn't delivered all at once. He threads it carefully, wrapping each warning in the language of protection. I want to keep you safe, he says. I want to shield you from the lies that can drag you away from salvation. It feels like care, but it works like a cage. Every caution he gives becomes another bar across the window, narrowing the view until his vision of the world is the only one left. The stories grow more dramatic. He speaks of conspiracies against the faithful, of unseen enemies watching the group. He tells tales of betrayal, former followers who turned away and were swallowed by ruin. Some died in accidents, some lost their minds, some, he says, were destroyed by the very demons they served. Each story drips with menace, a parable of what happens to those who doubt him. And as you listen, your own doubts, however small, curl inward like burned paper. It isn't only fear of the outside he cultivates, it's fear of yourself. He tells you that inside every follower is a shadow waiting to betray. Pride, greed, lust, sins that can flare if left unchecked. The only way to tame them is to surrender fully, to let him guide your every step. Alone, you will fall, he says. With me, you will be delivered. The message is clear. Trust your own thoughts, and you risk destruction. Trust him, and you'll be safe. You begin to notice the rituals of fear embedded in the group. Every sermon ends with chants, voices rising as one to declare loyalty, to curse the forces of evil outside. You feel your throat raw from shouting words you never would have spoken weeks ago, and yet they feel right, even necessary. Each chant is an anchor tying you deeper to him, reminding you that doubt is not just weakness, it's danger. Sometimes, late at night, you catch yourself wondering if it's true. Are there really enemies outside waiting to destroy you? Are there demons clawing at the walls of this place? The rational part of you resists, but the memory of his voice, calm, confident, unyielding, overpowers it. If you doubt, you invite ruin. The thought is terrifying enough that you smother your questions before they fully form. Fear becomes a compass, and the needle always points back to him. You measure your choices, your words, your very thoughts against the possibility of his disapproval. When you succeed, when you obey without hesitation, the fear ebbs, replaced by the warmth of the group's approval. When you falter, even slightly, the fear floods back, cold and suffocating. It is a perfect cycle. He creates the fear, and only he can take it away. And slowly you begin to crave that cycle, because in the twisted logic of the doctrine, fear means safety. Fear means you are still alert, still loyal, still dependent on him. To feel no fear would mean you've slipped too far, lost touch, opened yourself to the enemy. So you embrace it, clutching it like a talisman. You don't realize it yet, but fear has become the thread weaving your loyalty tighter. And with each stitch, the man who once spoke of love now rules you through terror, terror you mistake for truth.